Okay, so I want you to know, because see how it says preparing to live stream? I was watching the start of our last one. It's already starting.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. However, we do have to wait until that happens so I can shut it off so we don't hear ourselves. So, but I just thought that was really cool that I found out for sure that, okay, we're gonna do to the computer. Recording, live streaming, here we are. Welcome to our podcast.
Hey guys. EMPHORY Talks, Freedom Speaks.
Heck yeah.
Excited
You're
to be
like,
here.
need to scoot over a little bit. And
Scoot in.
get in the
Scoot
middle.
in.
Because I feel like, Gina.
Now we're here.
Now we're here. Here we are. And I'm clearly super short.
I usually like my chair pretty short. Maybe I'll join you down
Gina's chair is like this high.
there. There you go.
All right, cool. So
We'll get black, white today. Contrast.
let's put this one.
Oh.
All right.
Okay, we're gonna get real. We're gonna
Yeah,
get serious.
We're going to
now.
get so serious because personal development, spirituality is serious fucking shit. All right.
So hopefully, you might have listened to maybe one or two of the first few podcasts we had to give you a little overview, but if not, we'll give you a little taste of what we're going to talk about today. But we're sharing with you a lot of the practices and principles from the model that we coach from. And the model we coach from is called EMPHORY. Yeah.
EMPHORY.
EMPHORY. EMPHORY. Which again, I always love to say, like, if you try to text that, it spells out, I am free in my phone, which I think is so fun because really that's the basis of this model that it's given me. And that's why we call it EMPHORY Talks, Freedom Speaks. Because at the core of what this offers is personal freedom. So the model has practices and principles.
36 principles.
12 practices. And really, when
Guys, we didn't even plan that. That was so cool.
You're a very good director with your eyes. Yeah, you help me know. Must be those, you had cheerleader days, didn't you?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I did.
I think that's why you're so good at keeping your arms over your head for so long too. But
Oh,
ultimately, the foundation, the premise, I guess, that we're resting on is that we're 100% human and we're 100% spirit. It's not an or statement. It's really about learning the and so that we can tap into the fullness of us. So when we talk about our principles, it's really that it works. We see not how it works, that it works.
yeah.
And principles are really on our spirit side because it's the law, it's how it works. When we talk about practices, it's really in our human side so that we are always practicing, always becoming, which if you keep staying tuned, you'll learn that's one of our principles. So we draw out of we like to call it a hat. It's really an envelope, but today we did draw principle number 20. And so on that, it's on our human side, our human thinks, and on the spirit side, our spirit knows.
And here's what's really cool, I think, about that one is the thinking is cognitive and the knowing is the embodiment. And it's funny because we talked about this last week and Gina was even like, look at what we drew, but we just talked about this last week, which I think is actually really cool. The fact that there's things that we say we know, but we don't actually know it. We just think it. And so we think we know it. But one of the really cool things about the knowing, the embodiment, is it's undeniably truth for us, which means it doesn't have to be defended. It's kind of like if I went, hey, I don't think your name's really Gina. I think it's Gertrude. She wouldn't sit there and go, yes, my name is Gina. Like it wouldn't be a big deal. She'd be like, whatever. Okay. Like, I mean, she might say like, actually, my name is Gina. But if I wanted to argue with her, she wouldn't sit there and try to defend the fact that her name is Gina, because she'd be like, clearly this girl is, because she embodies the knowing that she's Gina. There's no defensiveness to it. And what's really cool about that is because one of our practices is everything is feedback. And what's really cool about the fact that if I have to defend it, it is the indicator that I only think it. I don't actually know it. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not something that's truth for us, but we haven't embodied it yet. Or I would not feel the need. Now, I'm not saying that somebody doesn't say, well, hey, I have a question about that. And you go, oh, this is what I believe, or this is what, I know to be true for me, or whatever. I'm not saying that we don't have a conversation. I'm saying that we don't get all triggered, like we have to defend it.
Or prove.
Yeah, or prove anything. Because the embodiment of it is like, you'll know the truth and the truth will set you free, i.e., why we love our model so much, right? So anyway, yeah, that's kind of my little start to why I actually think it's really cool that there is this difference, because it's the allowance of the indicator. Because guys, what we know is what we manifest. What we embody is what we manifest. So if I only think I know it, but I don't really know it, and it's not manifesting, now I can know why, right? One of the things we talk a lot about is, we teach manifestation, we teach how to have a cool life, but we do it from a really different foundation. But yet a lot of people are like, no, I really believe this, and I've been focusing and I've been doing the manifestation work, and it's not manifesting, right? And if truth is truth, and the law of attraction, which we believe is truth, from the perspective of how it works, then there's something amiss. And that's what I think is so cool when we look at the knowing, or the thinking and the knowing. The difference is because now we can know why what we think should be working isn't working in our life, right? Because this is really what EMPHORY is about. How to do life cooler and funner, and by design, instead of by default in that yucky space. Yeah.
What's coming up right now is just this idea of like, why do we need to know what's it like, how our human works and how our spirit works? Why do we separate this whole thing to even understand that, okay, our human cognitively thinks and our spirit is an embodiment of knowing? I mean, what's the value in that?
So for me, what I have found the value is the fact that we're 100% human and 100% spirit. They're both there. They're both working. They're both functioning within their individual sets of laws. However, if I don't know what's what, I'm all enmeshed, and I don't know why my life isn't working the way that I want it to work, because it's all enmeshed. But when we actually separate it and we look at it with the principles and the practices, now I can go, oh, this is why it's not working out, because this is the law. I follow the law because I am, right? The law is who I be. And so now when I know how it works and how to work it, now I can make the adjustments needed in order to do the thing that I'm desiring to do in my life, that I don't know why I can't do it.
Yeah, totally. I love it too, because just what you said, it just helps me understand. And I love this whole idea that we think we're separating. We think we're separating.
The illusion of it.
It's this illusion, but we can't truly separate. We separate to understand. We separate to see how it works, but there's always an and happening. But we do talk about this whole pendulum, and sometimes we're functioning a little bit more on our human side or a little bit more on our spirit side. So if I'm really humaning the shit out of this one, and I'm really in my thinker, like, what's going on? What's the experience like of that for some people, or for you?
Yeah, I would say, well, one, I think there's a lot of overwhelm. Like if I'm overthinking, there's a lot of overwhelm, because I'm trying to take all of this information and make it make sense. And if I don't understand that I think based on all of what's available to me in my subconscious mind, then I don't recognize that some of the things I'm thinking through to possibly be an option for me isn't really an option for me. Because, okay, let me give a little example. Well, let's do this, because this is a fun one and everybody can relate. Everybody can relate. If you want your body to be a particular size, shape, or weight, right? And somebody says, oh, this diet, this diet, this diet, this diet, this diet, this diet works, this diet works, this diet. And guess what? They all work, but that doesn't mean that it will work for your body. So if I'm trying to think through all of the diets and which one's easier and which one's more efficient and which one did people lose the more weight on and which one would be funner for me and which one can I still like eat my cheesecake and which one can I, right? Now we're thinking through it all. And that's why there's so much overwhelm, because that might have worked for that body, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for my body, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the why the thinker is a lot of anxiety and like overwhelm and frustration and like all of that, because I'm sifting through a lot that isn't even mine to sift through because I'm trying to find the right thing.
Yeah. And as you're talking, like, I think I know in that situation. So like, oh, I think I know all the right ways to do it. Yeah. And so I'm really like feeling attached and trying to figure it out and kind of grip my way through figuring it all out because I know, or I think I know in my head, which doesn't create this ease of actual information that can come from my knower. So yeah, I love that example. It's very tangible about the dieting to get it right, to get the result and thinking my way through it. And if we swung the pendulum and we were spiriting the shit out of it, and we're really just in our knower, can we use the same example? How might we interact with that?
From the perspective of it not working?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a good question, because I'm thinking, well, I could say that I know it, but
like applying the knower to the thinker.
Actually, here's a good way that we do the knower where I'm humaning this shit out of it. I mean, spiriting the shit out of it from the perspective of if something that I knew last week and I hold on to it being my knowing this week, then I'm spiriting the shit out of my knower, because something that was last week's truth might not be this week's truth. Mm-hmm. And so if I hold on to it as if it's true all the time, then I'm allowing, but see, even in that, that's almost still a little bit in the human side of holding on to it.
It is, yeah.
But it applies the principle of knowing. Mm-hmm. In that space of why am I frustrated? Well, because you think yesterday's truth is today's truth, and it won't be, because spirit side is always in flow, which means what's true for me yesterday isn't going to be true for me today, or might not be true for me today, and probably won't be true for me a week from now if I'm on a trajectory of growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've stumped myself on that one too. Like,
I like it though. I like
There's
it.
more to come.
Yeah, and I love that this is how we do this, because guys, we're constantly like, that's the cool thing about this model is there is no wrongness, and it's this forever unfolding. And if we stay in this place of curiosity, then the unfolding is fun and easy, as opposed to I gotta grow and I gotta get it right and I gotta do the thing and I want more and I gotta get better and right, that's all of it. But I do want to say one thing that came up when you were saying, because it's interesting how the knower works both directions, right? I can hear something, it can go in my body, and I can know the truth, and the truth sets me free. And I can also stop overthinking and ask my knower, and my knower can give me information this way. So that was kind of cool when you mentioned that. And I was like, oh, yeah, it goes both directions. How do I want or need to apply it?
Well, and then when we think about like the integration of the thinker and the knower. So I think that diet example is a really good example. Like, I've got all of these diets in my awareness, and I can tap in to see, oh, is this right for me? And I don't even have to do a diet, actually. I mean, I can start just, some people call it intuitively eating, but it's like, oh, does this feel good for my body or not? Does this, or you just listen. But that takes practice sometimes, figuring it out. But if you think you have to eat all of the specific things to get the result and you're not tapping into the knower, then you're not, again, having the fullness of the experience and probably not getting, I don't want to make it all about the results, but probably not.
It's part of it.
Yeah, you're probably not getting the results, and the experience isn't super fun either.
Yeah. And I love what Gina mentioned, because this is the other aspect of our container, or how our model works, because 100% human, 100% spirit. And then we tap into consciousness, and there's 4 phases of consciousness. And so if you are looking at this model of integration, and yet in a particular area, we'll stick on this whole dieting thing. So for me, food is something that has been my vice. Having a particular size body has been something that I was very attached to. And so this is really applicable to understanding consciousness, because, so for example, what Gina said was, well, we could also intuitively eat and trust our knower. And if I'm in a place where I might be super intuitive about lots of things, but I have an issue with food, I might not be in a position where I can intuitively eat food, right? Maybe I need to say, okay, well, for me right now, I know that I can't intuitively hear my body say, yes, Lori, have 2 Oreos, because my addiction to sugar is going to be like 2 in this minute and 2 in the next minute and 2 in the next minute, right? And I might not actually like listen to my knower, right? So I might actually put myself under the law and say, for me, I'm actually going to subject myself to not eating sugar at all, even though my body's saying, Lori, 2 cookies isn't that big of a deal. But I'm going, my head's going, it is for me, right? And so this is where we enter in love and acceptance and the fullness of us. So for my human side that has this addiction to sugar, I might have to swing the pendulum and go, no, I'm not having sugar. Why? Because it's actually bad for me, or all the things or whatever, I'm not integrated. No, it's actually grace for the human side of me that can't eat in moderation in this 5 minutes or whatever, right? So it's really honoring both sides of us that would, and maybe that's how we can spirit the shit out of it. I love how it all comes full circle, because I could spirit the shit out of it by going, oh, well, I'm just going to trust my knower. I'm not going to worry about willpower. I'm not going to do all that. I'm just going to trust my knower. And then I'm spiriting the shit out of it when honestly, I don't actually trust it, because this part of me has more say in the experience right now, which is why diets are beautiful, right? And non-dieting is beautiful too, right? And this is, again, the beauty of being able to recognize, well, where am I at in this particular situation, right? Because if Gina says, no, Lori, really, you could just fast. No, Lori, really, you could just fast. No, Lori, really, you could just fast. And then Gina has no idea that I have like thyroid disease that says you need to eat like this to regulate your metabolism, right? And she's all over here, fast, right? Now she doesn't do that. I'm just using her as an example, right? But this is where then, if I don't know myself, then I start going, oh, but I really trust Gina. And Gina, does yoga and Ayurvedic dieting, and she's so smart and she's brilliant in this area, and I should really listen to her. But I'm not listening to my body when my body's like, please don't do that. But I'm like, no, really, Gina is, right? But maybe my body's saying, well, how about if we just don't eat sugar instead of fasting, right? So it's always this ebb and flow of like, okay, how much do I listen to somebody else and how much do I listen to myself? And the beauty of like our model is it lays it out so you can see what part is doing what, so that you can go, if I'm frustrated, right? and I'm frustrated and I'm overthinking the diet, it's because I've got Gina's voice, I've got Richard Simmons' voice, I've got Suzanne Summers' voice, I've got Adkins, what's the original keto
Yeah. The
Dr.
I don't
Adkins diet. Yeah, that was right. Adkins diet. Right. I've got all these things in my head instead of balancing and integrating and going, okay, yes, I might need some of that and what's going on inside of me, and actually allowing the knower to speak and calm the thinking, but allow for the thinking with, okay, well, there are these options. Okay, cool. Which option does my body want? Right. So this is how we can start integrating.
And the cool thing also, she talked about grace, like with our human and our spirit, we get to just do it and see how we feel. Like that's really so awesome about this model. So we're dieting and we're starting to feel really grippy and it feels hard and willpowery and it doesn't feel easeful in the way we want it to. Pretty good indicator something needs to shift. Maybe we need to tap a little more into our knower. Okay, like I've got the structure down, I've got the thinking down on this. Do I need to step a little bit more into my knowing or a little bit more into the flow to balance this out? Because right now I'm too far, air quoting too far, I'm too far over here because it doesn't feel yummy. It doesn't feel good to me right now. And so much of this model is the experience, like the experiential learning of who we be and who we're becoming all at the same time. Because I love every time it comes back to this. I still all the time find where I'm finding something to be more right. I find intuitive eating more right than dieting. And it's like, no, there's a time and place for everything. Everything's allowed. It's all part of this. How does it make you feel? How are you interacting with the thing in front of you? Because that's really how individualized this model is and how powerful it is. What gives you freedom in this moment? What gives you freedom?
And I love it. I'm going to go back to, because Gina, when she was talking about the grippy and the going back to my example of choosing to be under the law of no sugar, right? If I'm humaning the shit out of it and I'm like, oh, I can't have sugar, then that's an indicator that I'm still off, right? As opposed to, no, I've subjected myself to the law on purpose because it feels better for me to choose, no, I can't have this right now because I'm doing this thing. And so it really is going back to, is it grippy? Is it triggering you? Is it causing you to like that toil inside is the indicator, not if you're doing grace or doing the law or intuitively eating or not intuitively eating, or it really goes back to, does it feel toilsome? That's the indicator you're not in a place where you're living in freedom.
Yeah, empowered is a word that I heard you talk about on a recording earlier. And it's, is it fueling me? Like, am I feeling empowered by how I'm interacting with this? Or is there more? Is there something more for me in this? Yeah, because I don't feel empowered personally when I'm grippy and holding on really tight. I feel like I'm expending a lot of energy and that I'm not receiving the empowering from within. I feel depleted. I feel like, I'm not plugged in.
Which goes right back to that empowered, right? Are you empowered? Empowered from the inside out, right? And this is really, what's cool about the progression of understanding our consciousness. Because sometimes I need, like, the empowerment might come from inside of me, but maybe I go, hey, Gina, I really need you to hold me accountable because XYZ, like, can you ask me at the end of every day, did you have sugar? Because I want that accountability. I feel empowered by the fact that something outside of me is going to hold me accountable until I can hold myself accountable, right? It's not this or that. It's the yes and. Maybe I can hold myself accountable today. Maybe yesterday I couldn't. Maybe I did it today, but tomorrow, like, all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, like I have this bigger goal. And so now I need some more accountability because, before the smaller goal, I could hold myself accountable, but this bigger goal, I can't, or whatever. And that's the beauty of the flow. And again, like you were just saying, like what feels full and yummy and expansive and empowering in this 7 seconds. Yeah. I feel like we didn't talk a whole lot about knowing and thinking, but
we did.
Okay.
Something I
You're
don't,
always right.
I don't,
so.
yeah, so are you. Something, and maybe it's unrelated, so sorry if you're following along and then you're like, oh, left turn. But today in coaching, we were talking about, we've talked about abundance, we were talking about fulfillment, and we were talking about the manifestation of that. So I think of my knower as knowing, like the knower of the truth, right?
Mhm.
Like it's my identity, it's who I be, it's all attached to the same thing, right? But it has to filter up through my subconscious, which is in my body, so it's part of my spirit, but it's also filled with all of the things that I've learned from the physical, and it kind of creates like almost a filter that my knower travels through when it's manifesting. Am I so far explaining?
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. So if the truth, and this is, I guess, part of my question. In the spirit, it's yes or no, black or white, right? So it's love or not love. It's abundance or the absence of.
So here's where, and I'm going to interrupt just a second, because here's where there's a little bit of the pendulum within the pendulum.
Oh man, I always get stumped up by that one.
Okay, so love is the only absolute. Love is love or the absence of love.
Okay.
On the spirit side, yes or no, black or white, but it's not necessarily this or the absence of, because I could say, which one do I drink? And this is the yes and this is the no, but it's not this or the absence of this. Yeah. Does that clear it up a little bit about what you were going to ask? Or
I think I'm going to table this, and I'm going to have us come back to this conversation, because I think it's actually kind of a cool conversation in and of itself. So yeah, tapping into the knower, tapping into the thinker, and just coming back to that conversation. One thing that I've been really practicing with this as well is, for a long time, I tapped into my heart space as my knower. And in this program, the knower's in our belly, it's in our gut, it's deep inside of us, in our bowels. Which is also kind of fun, because that whole gut system is really considered the first brain in so much like research, right? So it influences the thinker a lot. But if you're listening to this and you're someone who likes to tap into your heart, maybe practice tapping into your belly and just see what different information you get, if any.
I like it.
And notice even when you're maybe in that toil at times, like, can you identify, oh my gosh, am I in my head? Am I in my heart? Where is the toil happening? Where is the experience happening? Just so that you can start playing with, oh, I'm really in my thinker. Oh, I'm in my human. What would it feel like to have a little bit more spirit here, especially if you're in that grippy, toilsome space? Yeah. I just always love I like the physical tools of it. So something to play with.
I really like that, because, oops, sorry, I just kicked you. Because what a great tool to actually stop and go, if I were in my head, what would this feel like? If I were in my heart, what does this feel like? If I were in my gut, what does this feel like? And to be able to take our awareness and go, okay, how am I experiencing this in my heart? Okay, cool. I recognize this and what it feels like. And sometimes, guys, we get that whole feeling thing mixed up. call it sensing, call it knowing, call it feeling, but what we're doing is, what is that thing that you can't deny, right? Well, it feels, I sense that toil, right? Whatever. So if you're like, I'm this human design and I don't feel, okay, great. Do you sense it? Right? So sense that, and then go and put your awareness, put your attention on your gut. And then, like Gina was saying, well, what does it feel like there? What are you sensing there? What is that experience that's happening in your body? 6 inches, is that 6 inches between your head or your heart and your gut? They say this is 12 inches, so that's probably 6, right? So what's the difference when you put your awareness 6 inches lower? I love that. I don't think I've ever actually entertained that before. That's really cool, because I always just go, who am I talking to? Like, is it this or this? But I've never actually stopped to go, ooh, let me sense it in the different parts of my body and see what message I get that's different.
Yeah.
Really cool, Gina.
Yeah, thanks.
You're kind of a cool chick. See why I have her around, you guys? She's brilliant.
Back at you, sister.
Thanks.
Well, anything else about the value of this, or is there anything we need to unpack around wrongness related to thinking and feel or knowing?
Just throw out the wrongness.
That's always
there's your
my
unpacking.
answer.
Yeah. Let's unpack that. Stop it. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Easier said than done. We all know that. We're kind of kidding about that, guys.
But it usually is the one thing keeping us in shackles.
Yeah.
Like if we can identify if we're finding wrongness with our human or our spirit, usually it's with our human. We usually pedestal our spirit and think our human's trash. No, just kidding, but
not really.
She's not kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just again it's good awareness. That's really what so much of this is doing, is creating awareness. Oh, I'm finding wrongness with my human right now. What would it feel like to not? What if it would feel like? What would it feel like to find the rightness of me?
Yeah.
To think about what's right with me. To think about that I'm already in. We like to say right standing. I'm already in right standing. We'll unpack that in a future one, I'm sure. Yeah. Well,
and I love that, because again, what we look for, we find, right? What we ask for, we get. What we seek, right? We find. And when we're in the wrongness, we are just going to produce more wrongness. We're going to find more wrongness. We're going to discover more wrongness. We're going to get a wrong answer. We're going to, right? Instead of the flip side of going, okay, well, what's the value of my toil even? Oh, it's the indicator that something's amiss. Great. Okay. Well, what value can I find in my human when it doesn't want sugar? Whatever, right? Whatever that thing is that we're perceiving the wrongness, what if we could find the value in it? And sometimes it's shifting the pendulum to the other side and going, okay, I'm finding a lot of rightness with this. And so all I can see is the wrongness with this. So it's not necessarily, I'm focused on the wrongness of this, so I have to find value. Sometimes it's, no, this is just so good, I can't even imagine what's wrong with this, or that this isn't wrong. And so it's still doing the same thing where we're looking for the value of it, but sometimes we're not actually perceiving that we're in the wrongness of it. But if we're in the rightness of it as opposed to the wrongness of it, we're in the wrongness of it. Yeah. So yeah, just being able to stop and go, okay, what's the value? Instead of right and wrong, get out of the right and wrong and start asking, well, what's the value?
How is finding the value in something different than sugarcoating something?
Oh, let's see. Well, if I'm sugarcoating it, I'm taking the shit that I think is wrong and dipping it in the sugar and bypassing what's really there.
What the core of it is.
Instead of looking at the thing, looking at the shit and going, what's the value of this shit? Even if it's shit, what's the value of it? Well, let's just be literal for just a second, right? It's all the waste that's coming out of my body. Like, thank goodness for shit. It's waste coming out of my body, right? And so now we're not bypassing that shit stinks, that nobody wants to eat it.
It's not really shit.
That it's what?
That it's not really shit.
Yeah, that it's not really shit. That, oh, we'll just spray some, what's that?
Febreze.
Flush stuff. What's
Oh,
that?
poopery.
Poopery. We'll spray poopery on it. No, we want to actually go, no, yes, it's shit. And yes, it stinks. And yes, all of these things. And I'm so grateful that it's out of my body instead of still in my body, poisoning it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I, as you're talking about that, I feel like when in my past, when I'm sugarcoating something, it's like, I'm trying to almost look away from it, you know, like, oh, what's the value in the toil? Oh, I don't have toil right now. Like I'm trying to change the state, like you're saying, as opposed to like experiencing it and allowing it. And then I can actually move on from it. But if I'm trying to avoid the thing that's the shit, and I'm sticking it in chocolate or whatever else, example you use sugar, then it's always there smelling. But I'm looking over here saying, oh no, it's rainbows and sunshine. But you smell shit? I don't smell shit, but I'm smelling shit. But I'm not willing to admit that I'm smelling shit versus just allowing the whole thing, finding value in the wholeness of the experience. There's probably a better way to explain that, but I was really feeling that today.
Yeah.
I just it's the distraction of it. Like sugarcoating to me is a distraction more and more, where looking at it and it at times it's really important, right? There's actually value. I'm finding wrongness in the sugarcoating, but there's actually fucking value in the sugarcoating. There are times when we are so steeped and all we can see is the shit and we can't look up from it. So maybe we have to start sugarcoating our shit so we can remember, okay, that's taken care of for a minute and I can look over here for a little while. But eventually I'm going to have to, if I want to move beyond the fact that the shit's there and it smells, I'm gonna have to look at it and experience the shit. I wish we were using a different example than shit, but shit is probably the most visceral. All of us have smelled shit.
Yeah, it's pretty universal example for people to really like embrace.
Yeah. So if we're in the practice of sugarcoating, sugarcoat it, but maybe be aware of it. Maybe you sugarcoat. Okay, cool. What would it feel like to find a value instead?
Yeah. And I like what Gina said, because you might be asking, well, how do I know if I've actually like found the value or if I've sugarcoated it? Do you still smell it? Are you still trying to not embrace it? Are you feeling like, oh yeah, I've dealt with that, but in your knower that you haven't, right? Because your knower won't ever lie. Your thinker, it's not lying on purpose, but it thinks it knows. But your knower can't not know. That's the yes or no. It is or it's not.
Ooh, is our thinker the sugarcoater? Can we sugarcoat from our knower?
No, you can't sugarcoat from your knower. Because your knower just knows.
Yeah. So
it knows the truth and the truth for you.
Yeah. So our mind, our thinker is the one that really does the sugarcoating for us.
For sure. Yeah. And again, like Gina said, there's a time and a place. And one of the things that we talk about is there's a tool, it's called reframing. Let's reframe that, right? Let's reframe that. And that's what Gina was talking about, where sometimes like you can't see the value in it, so you reframe it. But reframing isn't necessarily looking at it, owning it, finding the value in it. Sometimes it's the sugar coating. But again, there's a time and a place for everything. And maybe if you thought you dealt with it, but it keeps coming up, but you're looking at it, you're like, no, it's covered in sugar. I don't see any shit. That's the really good indicator. Like maybe you need to scrape off a little bit and see what's underneath the sugar. Right? Maybe dig a little deeper.
Yeah, like an example's coming up, like, okay, a car accident happens.
Okay.
Right. And my sugar coating is like, oh my gosh, that was such a gift. It was just such a gift that thing happened to me. Like, oh yeah, there's no problem. It's such a gift that I got in a car accident. Like, oh, I'm just so grateful that I got in a car accident. We're looking at it like from value is like allowing the whole truth to come up. I'm feeling like that kind of sucked. Like I got in a car accident and that kind of sucked. And what's the value in the fact that happened? Oh, maybe I was on my phone. And so it was helping me like I need to pay closer attention. Like there's gifts inside of it perhaps, but it's not when I'm just thinking it's the gift and I'm unwilling to have the fullness of the experience, yes, it sucked and there's value. I feel like the sugar coating is the bypassing of yeah, this kind of sucked, or like the full experience of it. Yeah.
And that's not to say, guys, we don't have times, because it's funny that you use an example. So this one time I got hit from behind and genuinely I was in this state like, oh my gosh, what happened? I hope that guy's okay. And we pull over and really it was not a problem for me. Like genuinely, It was not a problem. I wasn't automatically sitting there going, oh, what a gift, because that would be the bypassing, right? But I was like, this is happening, right? But it wasn't one of those things that I would say, oh, this sucks. And it was just like, this just happened. We pulled over and it turns out that the guy was like, I'm so sorry. I was super distracted. I just came from my chemo treatment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can I pray for you? Right. And so I prayed with this guy on the side of the road that just hit me. Right. But however, I did just get in an accident last weekend and I'm going, this freaking sucks. And I haven't quite found the value of it yet.
And that's okay.
But and that is okay too. But it's exactly what Gina's saying. Like, I'm not going from it, like looking for the value of it, because right now I'm still grieving because it was a different situation. And this car wasn't just, I didn't just get hit in the back. Like I'm pretty sure the insurance company hasn't said it's totaled, but it's pretty much totaled, right? My car is totaled. And it wasn't just my car. There was other implications behind this particular vehicle. And so I am still in this place where I'm like, okay, it still stinks. Like this is still like, I'm still bummed. But the difference in the I'm bummed isn't, oh my gosh, this is awful and this is horrible and something went wrong and blah, 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 and I'm not caught up in it. I'm not attached to it. Does it stink? Yeah. Can I find the value in it? Not yet. Will there be some in my cognitive mind? Maybe not ever. But here's what I know. The universe is conspiring in my favor. God loves me. I'm not being punished. And everything that's happening in my life, I get to determine how I respond to it. And maybe that's the reason it happened. Maybe that's the only value is I get to have an experience and be honest about the experience I'm having and get to see that I can feel one way inside my body and my knower what's true and still have a human experience to go, that's a bummer. I'm bummed about this. And not be bummed thinking it's wrong, but just be bummed that this is the physical experience that I'm having. And I don't have to bypass that by going, no, really, everything, farming rainbows and all of that, which is exactly what Gina's been talking about the sugar coating, right? I'm not sugarcoating it with trying to not have the human experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That will come up a lot through this podcast, just finding the value and releasing the wrongness. So I'm excited to continue unpacking that one.
Yeah.
Because I'm excited by the fact that I do find a little wrongness still, just with the sugar coating piece.
Ah, yes.
And like, I think it's better to do something else. And anytime I find that for myself, and I will admit it on this podcast all the time, because you know what it does? It sets me freaking free.
Heck
If
yeah.
I pretend like I'm not finding wrongness, then there's no invitation for me to know more. That's me in my thinker thinking I know something and not allowing that full channel of like, oh no, there's more available. That's what's coming up from my knower.
Yeah.
And I don't have to push it down or push it aside. Oh, okay, cool. Like there's more for me to be aware of, more for me to know from my knower, because there's always going to be more. There's always more from our knower.
And you know what's really interesting that's been coming up a lot over the last few weeks that I think is so cool about what you're saying right now is it really is, like Gina was saying earlier, we put our spirit on the pedestal and our human is trash, right? But when we're finding the value in something and we're integrating that into our body, we're actually finding the value of the whole experience, which is the human experience, which then creates greater value in me. And the only reason we judge and the only reason we find wrongness is because there's something inside of us that doesn't know my worth, right? But I want to know my worth. I'm at a place where I'm ready to embody more of my worth, but I don't know it yet. So I look outside of me and there's something out there and I can judge it wrong, which then does what? Makes me right, which then makes me feel like I'm more valuable than my unworthiness. Yet, if it's not from this fullness of the embodiment of the value of my human, it's artificial, which means it's going to use up its value. And now I'm right back to square one. Mm-hmm. So the judgment and what Gina was saying, no, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm judging this. Why? Because I want to be so free from my judgment. And when I admit to you that I'm judging something, guess what? Just the awareness and the letting it out of my body that I'm judging something actually frees me up to see what? Automatically my innate value, my innate value. The only thing that keeps me from seeing my innate value is where somebody else has told me something is right or wrong, good or bad, and I have it sitting in my subconscious mind. But when I actually release that, now the thing from my knower is my value. Mm-hmm. That's so good.
So good. Is there anything else on this? No, this has been a long one.
This has been a long one, but it's been good.
It has been good.
I still go back to, I don't think we've really paid a lot of attention to the thinker and the knower, but we talked a lot about it and the different parts. And guess what, guys? We don't care, because this podcast is all about like what's coming up and what's fun for us to talk about and what are we discovering and how can we be an example of just moving through this thing called life and like having more of it.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah.
Thanks for being here. See you guys soon.
See you guys later. Bye. Hey, I don't know. Yeah. Because I don't know if anybody watches us live yet, but we're both going to be in Europe next Tuesday. So, right, Tuesday? When do you leave?
I leave on Friday.
This Friday? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. How was I thinking to leave the 19th, which is Tuesday? Anyway, yeah, so if by some chance, weirdly, that you're watching us live and you're like, next Tuesday at 3:30 or whatever, we start at 3:30, right? 3:30 Mountain Time.
Oh, like, yeah, we won't be here.
Yeah, we won't be here because we'll be in Europe.
Thanks for that reminder.
Yeah.
But we'll see you the following